The most powerful buildings on Earth right now aren't government facilities. They're not banks. And almost no one can find them on a map. There's a question that doesn't get asked enough about the infrastructure being built around us. Not how it works. Not who owns it. But what it means that it exists at all. At this scale. In this form. Right now. The United States currently operates more than 5,000 data centers. That number represents roughly a third of all data center capacity on the planet. The state of Virginia alone hosts so many of these facilities that a single county, Loudoun County, processes an estimated 70% of the world's internet traffic on any given day. Not a city, a county. One stretch of land in Northern Virginia is the functional nervous system of global digital communication. When you understand that, the word cloud starts to feel like something other than a casual metaphor. These structures are not abstract. They are physical, heavily fortified and deliberately located. They consume more water than mid-sized American cities. They draw electricity at scales that have forced entire regional power grids to restructure. And in most cases, if you drove past one, you would see a building with no windows, no signage, and a perimeter fence that tells you nothing about what's happening inside. But here's what almost no one notices. That description, a sealed structure with no visible markings, heavily protected, holding information inaccessible to the general public, is not a new invention. It is one of the oldest architectural templates in human history. And the civilizations that built structures like that weren't building storage facilities. They were building centers of power. The step pyramid temples of Mesopotamia were not just religious buildings. They were administrative centers, data archives, and instruments of social control, all in one structure. The priests who maintained them controlled access to written records, agricultural data, astronomical calculations, and legal documentation. In a largely illiterate society, controlling what was written and where it was stored was equivalent to controlling reality itself. The architecture was a statement. The sealed interior was not about secrecy for its own sake. It was about the relationship between information and authority, and who gets to define that relationship. That relationship has not changed. The architecture has. Now consider what it would mean if this comparison is not metaphorical but structural, not a poetic observation, but a functional pattern that repeats across civilizations because it reflects something consistent about how power actually works. Every major power structure in recorded history has been built around three functions operating simultaneously: the accumulation of information, the control of access to that information, and the ability to act on that information faster than anyone else. These three functions have never been separated in any civilization that managed to maintain concentrated power for more than a few generations. Ships arriving at Alexandria were searched, and any scrolls found were confiscated and copied before being returned. The library's accumulation was compulsory. Knowledge entering Alexandria did not leave in its original form. That's not a coincidence. That's a pattern. The modern equivalent is not a stretch. Every major technology platform has a version of this mechanism operating right now. Data enters their systems from your behavior, your communications, your location, your purchases, your hesitations, the articles you open and close without reading, the videos you watch halfway through. That data does not leave in its original form. It is processed, classified, and integrated into models that predict and influence your future behavior. The Ptolemies would have recognized this immediately, not because they were prophets, because the logic is the same. And this is exactly where it gets unsettling. The Google campus in Mountain View, California, is called the Googleplex. The name is a play on Googleplex, a mathematical term for a number so large it exceeds the number of atoms in the observable universe. The company that indexes the world's information named its headquarters after the concept of incomprehensible scale. That is not branding. That is a declaration of intent expressed in the language of mathematics. When ancient temples were built, they were deliberately scaled beyond human proportion. The columns of the Parthenon are taller than they need to be for structural support. The nave of a Gothic cathedral is wider than any congregation requires. The excess scale was intentional. It was designed to produce a specific psychological effect, the feeling that you are inside something that operates at a different order of magnitude than ordinary human experience. Something larger than you, something that will outlast you. Will outlast. Walk through the lobby of any major tech campus and notice what happens in your nervous system. The architecture is doing something to you. It was designed to do exactly that. If this is shifting something in the way you're seeing these structures, the light tells the algorithm this kind of investigation matters. It keeps this work alive and reaching people who are ready for it. There is a word that appears in the documentation of the intelligence community, in the internal communications of major technology companies, and in the academic literature on information theory, and that word is omniscience. Not as hyperbole, as an engineering target. The stated goal of several surveillance and data collection programs, documented in declassified materials and academic publications, has been what analysts describe as full-spectrum awareness, the capacity to know everything that is knowable about a target, a population, or a system in real time. The ambition is not to collect some information. It is to collect all information, to approach the theoretical limit of what can be known. That ambition has a name in every major religious and philosophical tradition that has ever grappled with the concept of ultimate knowledge. The name changes by culture and century. The concept does not. What's being built in those data centers is not just computational infrastructure. It is the closest approximation human civilization has ever constructed to the theological concept of omniscience. And the entities building it are not governments or religious institutions. They are corporations with shareholders, quarterly earnings reports, and terms of service agreements that almost no one reads. Here's something no one tells you about those terms of service agreements. The legal language used in the data agreements of major technology platforms consistently includes what lawyers call perpetual, irrevocable, worldwide licenses. That language means that data you generate on these platforms belongs to them not just now, but permanently, globally, and in ways that cannot be undone by you. The word irrevocable in contract law means exactly what it sounds like. It cannot be taken back. In the esoteric traditions of the ancient Near East, there was a concept called the me, pronounced may, in Sumerian culture. These were divine laws or powers, tablets that encoded the fundamental rules of civilization: kingship, priesthood, the art of writing, the descent into the underworld. The me were held by the gods and loaned to humanity under specific conditions. They could be taken back. Humanity's access to the rules of its own civilization was, in this cosmology, always provisional. The terms of service inversion is precise. In the ancient model, the divine held power and granted provisional access to humans. In the modern model, the human generates value and grants irrevocable access to the platform. The direction of the transaction reversed. The structure of dependency did not. What comes next is the part most people miss entirely. In 2016, Microsoft filed a patent for a system described as a cryptographic currency system using body activity data. The patent, publicly searchable in the United States Patent and Trademark Office database, describes a system where human physiological responses, including brainwaves, body heat, and physical movement, could be used to generate cryptocurrency tokens. The body performing tasks observed by the system produces verifiable computation, and that computation generates digital currency. The patent number is WO2006-0606. That sequence sits inside a standard number assigned by an automated system. Microsoft did not choose it, and yet it exists inside a document describing exactly that system. Make of that what you will. Whether you read symbolic weight into that sequence or not, the functional description of the patent is worth sitting with, independent of the number. The body as a mining rig, biological existence as computational labor, the platform capturing value from the basic fact of being alive and moving through a surveilled environment. This is not speculation. It is a filed and searchable document describing a system that had not yet been built but was being designed. The ancient concept of the soul contract, found across multiple esoteric traditions, including Gnostic Christianity, Kabbalistic philosophy, and certain strands of Hermetic thought, described an agreement by which a spiritual entity entered into material existence under conditions set by a higher power. The soul did not negotiate the terms. It arrived already bound. The terms of service agreement you clicked through without reading is not a soul contract. But if you were designing a secular, legally enforceable approximation of one, it would look very much like what it looks like. This investigation doesn't end here. What these structures are being used to build, the systems of prediction, influence, and behavioral architecture that run on top of the hardware, is a separate layer entirely. And that layer is where the ancient logic of oracular power becomes impossible to distinguish from its modern execution. Subscribe and turn on notifications. What comes next in this series maps the invisible architecture of that layer. You've just seen the foundation. The oracle doesn't announce what it knows. It waits for you to ask the right question, and it already knows which question you'll ask next.